Let's add some logic to the events search component. We got this form, but at the moment when this button is pressed and the form is submitted, we're not doing anything with that submitted data. And that should change. Therefore, I'll start by adding a nested function in the events search component, and I'll name this function submitHandler. That's the function that should be triggered when the form is submitted. So on the form element, we can add the onSubmit prop and point at submitHandler like this. Don't execute it, just point at it, so that submitHandler is executed by React when the form is submitted. Now, as you know, for example from my React course, we automatically get an event object here, because we're listening to a default DOM event. And here we should call event.preventDefault to prevent the browser default of sending an HTTP request, which I don't want to do here and which would reload our page and therefore lose all our application state. Instead, I want to handle this submission with JavaScript and therefore we prevent that default. And once that is prevented, we can now read the selected year and month. Now for that, we could set up two-way binding with useState and so on, but since I'm only interested in the values once when the form is submitted, I'll instead work with refs. Another key React feature which you should be aware of. If you're not, definitely take a React refresher or take my React the Complete Guide course where I dive into all React concepts in great depth. So here we'll then import useRef from React, and then we can set up our refs here, and we'll need two refs since we have two inputs. We'll have the year input ref, and hence I'll create my first ref with useRef, and the month input ref, and hence here I'll create this as well. And now that we got these two refs created, we need to connect them to the select elements. So on the year select element, I'll add the special ref prop and point at the year input ref. And on the month select element, I'll also add the ref prop and point at the month input ref. Now the refs are connected, and therefore now in this submitHandler, we can get the selected year by accessing yearInputRef.current. You always use .current to get access to the actual value the ref is connected to, so in this case to the select element. And then, since this gives us access to the select element, so to the JavaScript object representing that select element, we can access the value property, which every select JavaScript object has. So every JavaScript object representing a select element has a value property. Therefore, we can access this here to get access to the selected value. And we repeat that for the selected month. So with month input ref.current.value, we get access to the selected value on the month select element. And now we just need to kind of do something with those values. And I don't want to utilize them here in events search, even though we could do that, but instead I want to pass them to my all events page. And in there, I then want to programmatically navigate to that slug page here. And here we need programmatic navigation because we want to do that once some action completed. In this case, once the form submission completed and we extracted all the form values. So that's a typical example for programmatic navigation. Hence, as a first step, I do expect that on the props of this events search component, I have a prop, let's say, named onSearch. This name is up to you, but I'll name it onSearch following this convention because I expect that onSearch, the value for this prop, is a function, which I therefore can execute here. And it should be a function which accepts two parameters, the selected year and the selected month. So I'll call this function, and now we need to make sure that such a function is passed into events search through the onSearch prop. So in this index.js file in the events folder, so therefore on the all events page, we now need to set up this function here. Here we need to add a new function in this component, the find events handler function, for example, which expects a year and a month in this order, because that's how I'm then calling this function here. We're calling this function and we're passing in a year as a first argument and a month as a second argument. Hence, that's what I expect here. And then we do something with that. And it's now this function which is passed to the events search component through the onSearch prop, which we just used in there. So here I then pass at find events handler. We don't execute it here, we just point at it so that it's executed for us by this events search component here with this line of code after the form was submitted and we extracted our values. So then here find events handler will execute. And in here we now want to programmatically navigate. So for that we can import use router from next/router like this, and then call use router here outside of this inner function directly in the component function. All React hooks need to be called directly in your component function, not in any nested block statements. And that gives us access to the router like this. And on this router, inside of the find events handler, we can then call push to go to a different page. That's what you also learned in the previous course section. Now I'll construct the full path I want to go to here with a template literal, and the full path will be /events/ and now 2 dynamic segments so that we reach this slug here. And the first dynamic segment will be my year, and then / and then the second dynamic segment, which is month. Now, just to be clear, we could have more segments here, and this slug route would still be triggered. It simply consumes an unlimited amount of segments after /events. If we only have one segment, slug will not be triggered because we have a more specific route for that with the event ID file. And Next.js is pretty smart about that, and it sees that for one argument, for one dynamic parameter after events, we have a specific page, but for 2 or more, we have no specific pages, and therefore then this slug will kick in. So for this path, we'll reach the slug page here. And therefore that's the full path I want to navigate to. And with all that, if we now save this, if we now select, let's say, May 2021, and I click on Find Events, we are taken to /events/2021/5, which is May 2021, and we are on that filtered events page, just as expected. So now, as a last step before the final polishing, let's now load the proper events for this filter criteria.